Hello, everyone, and happy Holy Tuesday, and welcome to today's devotional. You know, this is probably the strangest Holy Week that the world will collectively experience in our lifetimes. I never thought that I'd live to see a pandemic. That's something we read about in our history books. With all the tech we have today and the abilities that we have today, I honestly never thought that we'd have to worry about something like this. And I'm sure that many of you might feel the same way. And I just keep thinking, I wish we'd all been ready. And I don't just mean America, I mean the world. I wish we'd all been ready. This one tiny virus, we weren't ready, and see what it has done, how it has dramatically altered our lives. Today's text is one that churches will read throughout the world. It's the story of the 10 bridesmaids, the ones who weren't prepared. Now, I said, look at what happened when we weren't ready for a virus. Imagine not being ready for when the Lord comes, because the Bible tells us that the Lord will come again. The Lord will come again and make all things new. And so Jesus told his disciples this story as a way to tell them, be prepared, because it will happen. So let us listen to the words that he has to share with them. At that time, the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. The foolish ones took their lamps, but they did not take any oil with them. The wise ones, however, took their oil in jars along with their lamps. And the bridegroom was a long time in coming, so they all became drowsy and fell asleep. And at midnight a cry rang out, "Here's the bridegroom, come out to meet him!" And then all the virgins woke up and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish ones said to the wise, "Please, give some of us your oil. Our lamps are going out." "No," they replied, "there may not be enough for both us and you. Instead, go to those who sell the oil and buy some for yourselves." But while they were on their way to buy the oil, the bridegroom arrived. The virgins who were ready went with him to the wedding banquet, and the door was shut. Later, the others also came. "Lord, Lord," they said, "open the door for us." But he replied, "Truly, I tell you, I do not know you. Therefore, keep watch, because you do not know the day nor the hour." This parable has a lot packed into it. But what Jesus was trying to convey was to be prepared for when the Lord comes again. See, being prepared for the Lord and being prepared for something that scares us, like the virus, are totally different things. Preparing for the Lord should be something joyous, because what it means is setting our faith free. When we have faith, we need to live into that faith, or else we only pretend. See, if we have faith that Jesus wants us to do good things, well, then go and do good things. Because Jesus will come to meet us. It could be in the next 30 seconds. It could be beyond our lifetimes. But we will meet him face to face. And I hope for all of us that it is a ready and welcome embrace. I'd like to share with you an essay that I absolutely love. It's a favorite of mine by Joshua Harris, and it's called "The Room." In that place, between wakefulness and dreams, I found myself in the room. There were no distinguishing features except for one wall covered with small index card files. They were like the ones in the libraries, by title, author, or subject in alphabetical order. But these files, they stretched from floor to ceiling and seemingly endless in both directions, and had very different headings. As I drew near to the wall of files, the first to catch my attention was called Girls I have liked. Now I opened it, and I began flipping through the cards. And I quickly shut it, shocked to realize that I recognized the names written on each one. And then, without being told, I knew exactly where I was. This lifeless room with its small files was a crude catalog for my life. Here were written the actions of my every moment, big and small and in detail that my memory could not match. A sense of wonder and curiosity, coupled with horror, stirred within me as I began randomly opening the files and exploring their content. Some brought joy and bittersweet memories, and others a sense of shame and regret, so intense that I would look over my shoulder to see if anyone was watching. A file named Friends was next to one marked Friends I Have Betrayed. The titles ranged from the mundane to the outright weird. Books I have read, lies I have told, comfort I have given, jokes I have laughed at, and some were almost hilarious in their exactness. Things I have yelled at my brothers, and others I couldn't laugh at. Things I have done in my anger. Things I have muttered under my breath at my parents. I never ceased to be surprised by the contents. Often there were many more cards than I expected, and sometimes fewer than I hoped. I was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of life that I had lived. Could it be possible that I had the time to fill up each of these thousands, even millions of cards in my years? But each card confirmed this truth. Each was written in my own handwriting. Each signed with my signature. When I came to a file marked Lustful Thoughts, I felt a chill run through my body. And I pulled out the file only an inch, not willing to test its size, and I drew out a card. And I shuddered at its detailed content. I felt sick to think that such a moment had been recorded. An almost animal rage broke on me, and one thought dominated my mind. No one must ever see these cards. No one must ever see this room. I have to destroy it. In an insane frenzy, I yanked the files out. It didn't matter now. I had to empty it and burn the cards. But as I took it at one end and began pounding it on the floor, I could not dislodge a single card. I became desperate and pulled out a card, only to find it as strong as steel when I tried to tear it. Defeated and utterly helpless, I returned the file to its slot. Leaning my forehead against the wall, I let out a long, self-pitying sigh. And then I saw it. The title bore, People I Have Shared the Gospel With. The handle was brighter than those around it, newer, almost unused. I pulled on its handle, and a small box, not more than 3 inches, fell into my hands. I could count the cards it contained on one hand. And then the tears came. I began to weep, sobs so deep that they hurt. And they started in my stomach and they shook through me, and I fell on my knees and cried. I cried out of shame, from the overwhelming shame of it all. The rows of file shelves swirled in my tear-filled eyes. No one must ever know of this room. I must lock it up and hide the key. But then, as I pushed away the tears, I saw him. No, please, not him, not here. Anybody but Jesus. I watched helplessly as he began to open the files and read the cards. I couldn't bear to watch his response. And in the moments I could bring myself to look at his face, I saw a sorrow deeper than my own. He seemed to intuitively go to the worst boxes. Why did he have to read every one? Finally, he turned and looked at me from across the room. He looked at me with pity in his eyes, but this was a pity that didn't anger me. I dropped my head, covered my face with my hands, and I began to cry again. And he walked over, and he put his arm around me. He could have said so many things, but he didn't say a word. He just cried with me. And then he got up, and he walked back to the wall of files. Starting at one end of the room, he took out a file, and one by one he began to sign his name over mine on each card. "No!" I shouted, rushing to him. All I could find to say was "no, no," as I pulled the card from him. His name shouldn't be on these cards. But there it was, written in red ink, so rich, so dark, and so alive. The name Jesus covered mine. It was written with his blood. And he gently took back the card. And he smiled a sad smile and began to sign the cards. I don't think I'll ever understand how he did it so quickly. But the next instant, it seemed, I heard him close the last file and walk back to my side. He placed his hand on my shoulder and he said, "It is finished." I stood up and he led me out of the room. There was no lock on its door, and there were still cards to be written. Friends, we all have cards still to be written. What will ours say? We must prepare ourselves for that moment when we find our room with all of our index cards. It could be in the next 5 seconds. It could be in several years. But we know that it is coming because the Lord comes for each of us. So let us be ready. Let us be ready to run to him for an embrace. Amen.